もビリッと頑張るぞ
Sachi, you're going to be on house sitting duty.
なんで私もついていくよ
サチさんにはやってもらうことがあるんだ。君にしかできない最高の仕事がね。
Take care of Sachi, Sona.
さっちゃん、頑張ってね。
We march forth underneath the blue sky, ignoring Sachi's slightly panicked yelps. Okay, since I learned my lesson, we probably have to go to Toka's house first, right? To get info from her mom, right? Unless her mom is also already detained. We heard arguing as we approached Toka's house. We quickly took cover.
何度も言ってるでしょ。トウカはいません。
なら自宅に入れさせてもらってもいいでしょ。
ついさっきもあなた方は勝手に家に上がり込んだじゃないですか。あなたたちは探すだけ、散らかすだけでいいかもしれませんけど、私は片付けもしなくてはいけないんですよ。
しかしですね。
とにかく家にはいません。飛び出していったきりなんです。お引き取りください。
また後ほどお伺いしますよ。
Sorry. These guys are like loan sharks, dude. What the
また
fuck?
後ほどお伺いしますよ。何度でもね。
After we made sure that the policeman had left, we approached Kyoko-san. Yo, how's it going?
森田くん？
You were copying quite the attitude there. I guess not even the security police are a match for the mighty Kyoko-san.
あなたこんなところをうろうろしてて平気なの？
Small talk and wait. We don't have much time left. Where's Toka?
一昨日の夜だったかしら。急に治安警察が家にやってきて、トウカをこっそり窓から逃がしたのよ。
She hasn't been back since then?
私、一体どうしたら？
Her thin frame trembled with concern for her daughter.
お願い森田くん、助けて。
No, you're the one that needs to help me. Where is she? Just leave it to us. It's a piece of cake if we're on the job.
俺たち？
Hey, come on. She's right beside me. Maybe you should just chalk that one up to your imagination. I guess she doesn't want to be an accomplice. Alright. We returned to the road, leaving behind a rather shocked Kyoko-san. In any case, we needed to hurry up and locate Toka. What's up?
パスワードだけど、トウカちゃんに話したような記憶があるのよ。
What? Seriously? And that's all the more reason for us to hurry up and find her. Now then, where should we go? Why would I go to the mountain path? That makes no sense. There were more troops out than yesterday. The streets were nearly overflowing with them. This is worse than I thought it would be.
昨日ちょっと暴れたからじゃない？
Hey, it's not like I killed anyone.
昨日の2倍以上の警戒と考えていいわね。
Looks like I've gone and pissed pops off.
警備がきつい理由はそれだけじゃなさそうね。
Huh? When Achan picked up a pamphlet that was laying on the road. A criminal will be publicly executed tomorrow at 9. All citizens are compelled to attend and gave into their minds the fate befitting for a fool who has broken our nation's laws.
ケン、落ち着いて。少し一服する。
Smoke?
薬。
Oh, I'm fine. I took a few deep breaths in order to calm down.
どうしようかしら。
It was hard to believe that Toka would be hanging around such a well-guarded area. Let's try somewhere else.
そうね。
It was already past noon. Quite a bit of time had passed.
急ぎましょう。
There's no way we go to her house again, right? The sunflowers fluttered in the wind, unchanged by what was happening.
トウカちゃん！
Toka, answer us! We called Toka's name again and again. Our only response was that of the autumn wind, however.
ここでもないってこと？
Sachi was here, so I thought that maybe. Well, I guess that's not the case.
私もこの辺りだと睨んでたけど。
We searched a bit more, but found no traces of Toka.
さて、待っててね、トウカちゃん。またいじめてあげるわ。
something wrong with these people. Just what the hell went on between those two in the past? We turned our attention upon the dense shrubbery. Toka could have been hiding around here. Please be safe. I couldn't stop myself from praying.
きっと大丈夫よ。あの子は強いわ。
I nodded, then resumed looking through the forest. Where could she be? She's not in the mountain path. She's not in her house. She's not in the shopping district. Where can I find her? Can't be shopping district. There's no way she's that careless. She hid in the sunflower field before, right? In her chapter. I guess if we go to the sunflower field again, we could potentially look at the field, you know, inside of the sunflowers instead of just the road. Maybe. We shouted Toka's name. There was no response. Maybe they already caught her.
諦めるのはちょっと早いんじゃない？
She gave me an accusing stare. You're right. I guess I was getting a little whiny there.
いいのよ。私の前では弱くてもね。けれど、他のみんなの前では強くありなさい。
Yeah. I wanted to be strong around One-chan as well, though. Oh my god! Maybe she had returned to her house. With this thought in mind, we visited the One residence once more. Kyoko-san did not come out to greet us, however. Looks like she's not in.
ここで待ってる？
Well, we don't know when she'll be back. There was also the possibility of the security police showing up again. I heard a voice from behind as I pondered our options.
どうしたの？もしかしてトカが見つかった？
She rushed over to us. I guess this means that Toka hasn't returned to her house yet.
森田くんもトカが見つかったからというわけではなさそうね。
We nodded to each other. Where were you?
トカが戻ってきたらお腹を空かせてるだろうと思ってね。商店街に行ってきたの。
Weren't there a lot of security police around there?
それだけじゃないわ。何も買えなかったの。
What? Did you forget your purse?
スーパーが閉まってたのよ。
I wonder when that happened. I doubt they had closed their doors in protest to the occupation of the town.
商品の流通が止まったのね。もともと細い流通経路だけに数日で町の食料品が不足し始めたのよ。
One-chan had spoken up so suddenly that Kyoko-san didn't know how to react.
ケン、何か引っかからない？
What do you mean? Does anything come to mind?
トウカちゃんのことよ。ここまで探して見つからないってことは、私たちが想定してる範囲外の場所にいるってことも視野に入れた方がいいかもしれない。
Somewhere removed from our initial assumptions then. Hadn't the checkpoint here been used for agricultural inspection at one point?
料理大好きのトウカちゃん。さてさて、どこをどう逃げ回っていることやら。
The checkpoint had probably been one of the first locations seized by the security police.
どうかどうして帰ってこないのかしら。
I mean, if she came back, she could get captured easily. There must be some sort of reason.
でもあの子はあなたと違って普通の女の子なのよ。
Oh, please don't worry about that. She's a lot stronger than I am.
任せなさいってことね。
どこへ？
She might have decided to go to the entrance of town. The checkpoint. Why?
検問所。
We left the One residence. Why would she go there? Oh my god. We flew down the road lined with sunflowers like the wind itself. We have been unable to locate Toka no matter we had searched. Only one place remained.
見えた。
One-chan stared straight ahead, short on breath. If she's not here, we're in a bit of a trouble. The sun had set. It was already completely dark. We approached the checkpoint building, guided by the light coming from within. We had run out of time to search today, and tomorrow was Natsumi's public execution. We suddenly heard an angry-sounding voice from within the checkpoint. We hid amid the sunflowers.
お願いだからこの町に物を入れてよ。
そういう指示が出ているからだ。
指示って食べ物がないと町の人たちが困るじゃない。
それは我々の判断するところではない。
The girl who was crushing the guards was none other than Toka. How reckless. There were a few guards at the checkpoint at least, probably because they had all been sent into the town itself. I guess we had gotten lucky in that sense.
スーパーの人は売るものがないって言ってたんだよ。ちょうど季節の変わり目で倉庫が空になってたんだって。このままじゃみんな困るじゃない。
通行の許可が出れば通す。出なければ通せない。それだけだ。
わからない。食べ物を運んでくれるまで帰れないから。
いい加減にしないと。いくら子供とはいえただでは済まされないぞ。
She had decided to ask them about the supply blockage. She had walked this far. Come on, they're after you, you know? Well, in the end, Toka was the sort of person who would not waver in her determination. Another man came out of the building and began speaking with the man Toka had been talking to.
そういえば貴様、いつぞやの娘ではないか。罪人の分際でこの町から逃げ出そうとしていただろう。
それが何よ。関係ないでしょ。
しかも、お前には今逮捕命令が出ているという。
The men gradually approached Toka. Toka showed them no fear.
じゃあ私がおとなしく捕まればこの町に物を運んでくれる？
はあ？
ねえ、あなたもお仕事大変だと思うけどみんなが困るんだよ。ご飯が食べられなくなっちゃうんだよ。こんな小さな町にみんなを閉じ込めていい気分しないでしょ。
Trying to plead to their emotional side, eh? This time it was Toka who cornered the man.
お願いだよ。今は偉い人もいないでしょ。だったら少しだけでいいから門を開けてあげてよ。
I wouldn't be surprised if, like, worst case scenario happened, like when Natsumi got executed and then the people react in a different way, that Hozuki would just order everyone here to get shot. I would not be surprised, to be honest.
それはできんと。
Her unflinching gaze must have held quite the power. The men shrunk back a bit.
こんなことして嫌じゃない？あなたにも家族がいるんでしょ？もうやめようよ。みんな悲しむよ。
舐めるような口を聞きよって。
The man raised his fist. Neither I nor Onechan stopped it. Her mother's scream did, however. She pedaled into the scene on a bicycle, headed straight for Toka.
お母さん。やめてください。
Kyoko-san was very nearly fell off of the bike, but she managed to catch herself and face the man.
この子は私の娘です。
娘だと。親のしつけがなっていないのではないか。バカなことばかり。ビービーわめくガキに育ておって。
Kyoko-san stopped Toka from stepping forward.
大根十日の母親ということは大根京子だな。親権者適正研修から逃げた分際でなんだ。貴様親としての資格があるとでも思っているのか。
Kyoko-san took a step back. The man started getting even more worked up.
必死で自転車を漕いで現れて何の真似だ。滑稽ではない。そこに義務を負わせるような母親が今さら我が子を助けに来たとでも言うのか。
確かに私は最低の母親です。資格などないのかもしれません。
Kyoko-san's weakness made itself apparent in her voice.
でもそれでもどうかの母親なんです。目の前で大切な我が子が手を挙げられているのにそれを黙って見ていられるわけがないでしょ。
Oh, you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised, Kyoko. Her dignified shout echoed through the sunflower field before disappearing into the night.
10日にうちの子に手を出したらただで済まないわよ。
Onechan dashed out of the sunflower field.
資格なんて所詮は社会が決めた基準の一つでしかないわ。弱いやつほどそういったものにすがるのよ。資格とか学歴とかね。
The man turned to Onechan in shock. That's when I came around from his back. He twisted his arm around behind him before he had even had the chance to groan. His expression changed from one of pain to one of astonishment. Good evening. Been a while, hasn't it? The alarm began to ring. I knocked the guy out, then turned to everyone and spoke. Get the hell out of here. The security police are gonna be here at any moment.
ケンイチは
ケンは平気よ。私についてきて。あ、森田君。
Yes?
私は足手まといになりそうだから先に自転車で逃げるわ。
Yeah. It would probably be the best option.
大丈夫よ。少しの間なら教員仲間の家にかくまってもらえるわ。
Then I had better make sure to do something about this town in that little wall of yours.
お願いね。信じてるわ。
You were awesome back there, Kyoko-san. We exchanged smiles.
お母さんありがとう。いろいろありがとう。
まったくいろいろと起こりたいことはあるんだけれど今は森田君に任せるわ。
Kyoko-san got back on her bike and tore down the road like a bat out of hell.
それじゃあ行くわよ。
リリコさん
Toka called out to One-chan.
リリコお姉様でしょ。
One-chan started shivering. I don't even want to know why. Hey, save your idiotic conversations for later. We need to hurry. Toka and One-chan fled from the scene, with me bringing up the rear. Toka was pretty damn fast. I guess those marathons in the mornings had paid off. Whew. Sure, we should be safe after coming this far.
まったくトウカちゃんたらバカな真似をしたわね。
I keep flipping my words, maybe because I'm getting tired. It is like 4 a.m. Oh god.
と
Try as she might, Toka couldn't look One-chan head
お
on.
母さんに逃がしてもらって商店街をうろうろしたりひまわり畑に逃げたりしてたら検問所に来たの。そしたら街の外からトラックが来て運転手さんがいきなり殴られて。
She hadn't been able to just stand by and watch. That's enough, Toka. Come on, you can talk to her. You can talk to her, alright?
そうよ。久しぶりね、トウカちゃん。
I think it's supposed to say you can talk to her later. Alright. Toka stared down at the ground, a bit perplexed, then nodded shyly.
はい、10年ぶりくらいですか。いろいろと聞きたそうな顔ね。なんでずっとケンイチの後ろにいたんですか？ダメかしら？あ、いえいえ、いつも一緒にいたので、なんでかなと。
For some reason, Toka seemed to be a bit apprehensive around One-chan.
森田ケンイチって人物はね、この世に存在しないの。え？何の話ですか？本名は樋口健。私の弟で、さっちゃんや磯野くん、夏美ちゃんの幼なじみ。それでもってお姉ちゃんが大好きで大好きで仕方のないシスコン男。
That last one is a lie. Sorry, Ririko. I already made my choice. Hey now, it was true in a sense, but you didn't need to exaggerate it that much.
じゃあ、ケンイチが、サチの言ってた樋口健で、リリコさんの弟で、樋口三郎さんの息子で。
She was confused.
まあまあ、いいじゃない。ケンイチでもケンでも。
One-chan approached Toka with a smile.
そうだね。私はみんなと違って昔のことはよく知らないし。寂しい思いをすることはないのよ。あなたには私との美しき日々があるじゃない。
Why don't we get back to Isono's place for now? Toka seemed to have calmed down a bit by the time we reached the house.
へえ、ここって磯野の家なんだ。偏僻なとこにあるね。
天才っていうのは大体こういうところに住むんだ。
Isono was looking as smooth as ever. It looked like he had known we would rescue Toka all along. No, you're confusing geniuses with weirdos.
変人と天才は紙一重って言うじゃないか。
That fine line is wider than you think.
突っ込むな。マジトークは面白くないから嫌なんだけど。
そこの変人2人、とりあえず食事にしましょうよ。トウカちゃんがお腹空かせてるでしょ。
I'm actually quite hungry myself. Where's Sachi? Sora pointed to the sliding door.
別室にて作業中です。
ほらほら、トウカちゃん、何をしているの？ご飯といえばトウカちゃんでしょ。あ、はい、その台所を借りるね。
I think that's the first time she called Isona without the kun. Wow. Interesting. Toka pranced into the kitchen.
姉上は委員長とどういったご関係なのでしょうか。
聞きたい？長くなるわよ。
Tell us the abridged version. It'll keep us busy until food's ready.
おしとやかで優しい娘を怒りんぼでわがままな女に落とす過程を話そうと思っていたのに。
No thanks. What the hell are you laughing? Do you remember something funny?
大学に通ってた時にね、偶然アパートが隣だったのよ。当時は京子さんもうまく子育てできないみたいで、トウカちゃんも泣いてたの。お母さんがってね。こんにちは、お嬢ちゃん。私はリリコ。あなたは？お母さんが。
I don't think this is appropriate, Ruriko.
あらあら、泣いてちゃダメでしょ。そんなに可愛い顔してるのに。
What the hell? I definitely heard a smacking sound just now.
だって私もみんなと夜まで遊びたいよ。泣いてちゃダメだって。ほら、笑って。笑うのよ。しょうがないな。私がとっておきの一発ギャグを教えておいてあげるわ。一発ギャグ？メガネをこうグイッとおでこの上に上げて叫ぶの。
Damn you, anime.
デコデコデコリーンって。それ面白いの？大丈夫だって。今教育テレビ見てた世代はドッカンドッカン来てるから。
Edutainment? What the hell? Is that a typo? Is that an actual word? Education and entertainment in one word? Holy shit, it's an actual word? The hell? Are you serious? Are you serious? This is an actual word? It's used by Walt Disney? The hell? In 1954? Are you kidding me?
ドッカンなの？ドッカンよ。わかった。忘れないよ。
Man, the translator of this visual novel is kind of like... He knows some weird-ass words.
本当に可愛い子ね。お姉ちゃん、よろしくね。お姉様ね。
You're awful, One-chan.
だってトウカちゃんっていじめたくなるでしょ。
Guess she did fit that particular archetype.
って、
She suddenly shouted.
今なんか来たよ。ビリッと来たよ。
What did?
パスワードよ。
おお。
Did you receive the message with the password around the time you knew Toka?
そう。トウカちゃんなら何か知ってるんじゃないかしら。
I thought you said you knew the password. Okay, we'll ask her about it after the food is done. One-chan nodded.
話を戻して、大根親子との絡みは？
そうね。ダメよ。ちゃんと腕を組むの。舐められたらおしまいよ。わかったよ。こう？そう。ちょい顎を上げて相手を威圧するような姿勢をとるの。そう。ギロってね。ギロ。いい感じよ、トウカちゃん。それでね、なんかムカつくことがあったらぶっ殺すぞって言いなさい。いい？
She really put a lot of emphasis on that I'll murder you.
はい、ぶっ殺すぞ。いいわよ。お姉ちゃんちょっと気分良くなってきちゃった。私もお姉様のようになりたい。じゃあ私の言葉に続いてね。はい。私 くだらない話とか興味ないから。私、くだらない話とか興味ないから。いじったでしょ。今私のこといじったでしょ。いじったでしょ。今私のこといじったでしょ。私、あなたのことなんか嫌いだから。私、あなたのことなんて嫌いだから。
So Toka's twisted personality was all One-chan's fault.
それから半年くらい一緒に遊んだりしたんだけど、別れ際にこれから大変な事件が起こるかもしれないから、しばらく都会は離れた方がいいわよって言っておいたわ。
The uprising, huh? So you predicted it to an extent then.
まあ、私はお父さんの手伝いをする気だったからね。そろそろご飯できるよ。
A voice came from the kitchen.
さて、トウカちゃんにいろいろ聞かなきゃ。
It was past midnight.
食った食った。
We finished a peaceful dinner together. It feels kind of cramped in here with all 5 of us though.
ことが終わったらここを君に譲ろうじゃないか。
What?
悪くない話じゃない？懐かしい我が家だし。
その代わり僕は委員長の家に住まわせてもらうが。
ダメに決まってるでしょ。
Well, I'll think about it.
考えないでよ。あらあら、トウカちゃんも凶暴になったわね。
She giggled.
ねえねえ、それで結局パスワードは分かったの？
Sachi spoke casually to One-chan without a shred of fear.
ああ、それね。今からトウカちゃんをいじめて思い出すところよ。
One-chan began questioning
トウ
Toka.
カちゃん、私を見て何か思い出さない？何かって？パスワードって数字？数字ね。何桁あったか忘れちゃうくらい多かったわ。なんか語呂合わせとかで覚えてたんじゃないの？は、語呂合わせ？いいんじゃないの？それナイスじゃないの？そんな気がしてきたわよ。テンション高いですね。さあトウカちゃん、なんか面白いこと言ってみなさい。っていうか、私全く事情が飲み込めてないんだけど。後で教えてあげるわ。いいから早く。
Oh, sorry.
後で教えてあげるわ。いいから早く。
The hell? What's wrong? One-chan suddenly looked very tired.
なんか今グラッときたわ。
You're probably just tired. You were running around all day after all.
その上それだけハイテンションで喋れば酸欠にもなりますよ。
体力には自信あったんだけどな。義務を負っていてもちゃんと喉も使っていたし。大丈夫？ちょっと横になる？いや、いいわ。ギャグの範疇だと思う。
Actually, I highly doubt that. Toka, who had been blankly watching our conversation until now, suddenly spoke up.
お姉さん、パスワードってまさか。お、何思い出したの？確かお姉さんがアパートを引き払うとき。ああ、感動の別れのシーンね。話すと長くなるわね。それでね、私に言ったでしょ？
What?
散々親を泣かせなさいって。これ念のために覚えておいてって。
Ha. I think we heard that phrase before, right? In her chapter, I believe.
言ってないわよ。なんでそんな物騒なことを私が。でも私確かに聞きましたよ。
330879じゃないんですか？
I have no idea, Isono. As soon as Isono muttered that, it doesn't cover the entire phrase, but is that it?
いや、待って。黙ってみんな。そこから先の数字は。
One-chan suddenly assumed a solemn expression. Isono, start the computer.
もうやってる。
942113256。
She muttered one number after another.
すっごい。そんな桁数を覚えてるなんて。
I'm pretty sure Oni-chan had been the top of her class back in university. Her words came to a halt, however. Apparently she had gotten stuck. Her fingers trembled in vexation.
さっちゃん、はい。この国と南方の王国の通貨で為替取引した場合、どれくらい手数料取られる？
Are you serious?
あそこの通貨を取り扱ってる唯一の会社じゃ。
Sachi stated the amount.
よし。
Whatever mnemonic devices she was using were really something. She resumed spouting out numbers.
7774221.
You'd think that it'd be the same, like, 7 years ago compared to 9? Compared to now, I mean? It was already longer than 20 digits.
ケン、あなたの誕生日プリーズ。
Yeah. Told her my birthday.
磯野くん。
はは。
なんでもないわ。
Oops. Sorry, my mouse is full. My battery is full. Oni-chan looked backed up.
出たわ。合計36桁。
Whoa, incredible.
なんだかよくわからないけど、すごそう。
We all looked at each other.
さて、見せてもらいましょうか。お父さん。
We had finally obtained Dad's inheritance. Is it really the true password though? It better be. I can't believe I had laughed off information from 7 years ago so readily.
やばくないこれ。
Even Sachi, not known for her concern toward others, had gone pale.
ID カードを書き換えるくらい簡単な話だったな。
Data on special high-class individual ID cards and a method for manufacturing them were listed almost casually among the contents of the stick.
これ
Really?
があれば脱税し放題じゃない？
The stick also included a breakdown of the national budget, details on the allocation of secret funds, a list of loopholes in the pension system, schedule for periods of increased taxation, and newly proposed laws.
私のおじいちゃんに当たる人の名前もあるよ。
There was indeed a chart outlining the connections between various high-ranking political figures, as well as a history of disputes between their factions and information on their under-the-table donations.
人身売買の裏情報もある。
She was probably thinking about Mana.
この情報があれば、確かに国と戦えるわね。
Apparently, our country possessed chemical weapons which were banned by an international treaty. I wonder what could happen if we sold this information to another country.
そういう風に脅しをかけようか。
I was just joking. For now, anyway.
いずれにせよ、これは武器だ。
Isono had a look in his eyes that I had never seen before. Hey, don't get ahead of yourself. That sure didn't win even with this information.
そうだった。危うく本当に妖精の世界に行くところだったよ。
Of course, this information certainly held the potential to prompt a revolution. That must have made a mistake somewhere.
あれ？なんだか目立つファイルがあるよ。
It was a small text file. Let's open it.
ケンに向けてのメッセージのようね。
Let's read it then. Come on, Ken. I told you not to follow in your dear old dad's footsteps. Oh well, I understand. You reading this just means that you're ready and raring to go, eh? However, please don't try and take down the entire country just because you have this information. You can still turn back. I think a simple, positive life out in a country like how Natsumi-chan lives is a wonderful thing. Ruriko probably doesn't share this idea though. She's definitely gonna want to do something about this country of ours. Well, fine by me. It's your life, so do as you please. Let me give you some tips. First off, your dear old dad has a friend who took the special high-class individual exam with him. His name's Hozuki Masaomi. Right now, he's serving as a special high-class individual. He's also the director of the public security police. His influence spreads all the way to the presidential chair. He's so damn fantastic that it's pretty much abnormal. I'd have to say that if there's anyone who can kill me, it'd be him. Lol. Thanks, Dad. I'd like to tell you to rely on the guy. That's probably a pretty damn bad idea. Hozuki's way more fearsome than any political bigwig out there. After all, he's the candidate for sage. Sage. I suppose I should explain. A sage is something along the lines of a king. In the near future, this country of ours is planning to shift gears to a constitutional monarchy. And it's looking like the parliament will be a little more than a decoration. Scary as hell, then again, it also end up improving society. By the way, about Ririko. Her body's not actually all that strong. We never told you. She used to catch these really nasty colds. She got seriously injured after a little fall once too. Don't let your guard down just because she acts cool. The only reason she went off to study the human body and spirit is because she hates her own. I want you to look after her, Ken. Hear me? Ah, crap. I'm just not cut out for this serious stuff. Alright, what follows is Higuchi Saburo's top 100 jokes.
なんで消しちゃうの？いいところだったのに。
Toko was the only person interested in the jokes.
お父さん。
Oni-chan stared wistfully at the screen. I had just learned something quite surprising about the girl who had always stood in front of me.
ひとまず森田くんの ID カードを何とかしよ
Do you think we can manage something for tomorrow night?
う。やるしかないだろ。
私も頑張るよ。なら一度作戦の確認をしましょう。
Looked like Oni-chan had already perked right back up.
私も何かできることあるかな？もちろんよ。
The five of us huddled together and faced each other. We'll all help Natsumi together.
っていうか、その前に一つだけいい？今思いついた作戦なんだけどさ。
Let's hear it.
リリコさんって周りからシカトされるじゃん？ホウズキ以外の人間にはね。ってことはさ、リリコさんがケンイチの ID カード持って学園に侵入して夏美を助けてくればいいんじゃない？それはダメよ。たとえ私が手よく夏美ちゃんを牢から連れ出したとしても、私はともかく夏美ちゃんは治安警察に捕まえられちゃうわ。あ、そっか、うっかり。
Also, Hozuki's probably keeping his eyes peeled for Oni-chan. I wouldn't be surprised if you were monitoring the prison door personally.
当然だろう。敵はそこさえ守ればいいのだから。
だから私たちでホウズキを別の場所に移動させるのよ。おお、なるほど。なんだかいけそうだね。
それでは作戦の説明をする。概要は治安警察の目をかいくぐり地下に侵入し、夏美ちゃんを安全な場所に連れ出した後、ホウズキを退けることにあるんだが。
How the hell are we supposed to lure out Hozuki? The night passes by in a flash. It was nearly dawn. Our conference had finally ended. Everyone was taking a break. I inhaled a puff of smoke. This might be my last smoke. I had run away from this town 7 years ago. The reason was simple. I was afraid. I didn't want to die. That's why I was still alive today. My friends had forgiven rather than condemned me. They were strong. They didn't continue to dwell in the past. What about me? Am I strong too? The smoke formed into a cloud in front of me, refusing to vanish into the night sky. Perhaps it represented my weakness and guilt.
ここにいたの。
Oh damn, I've been lost in thought. I panicked and tried to hide my pipe. One-chan was so close behind me, I wasn't even able to turn around. She wrapped her arms around me from behind.
ケン、大きくなったね。
Her aroma mixed with the traces of the smoke.
相変わらず綺麗な背中してる。
Why do you have a back fetish, damn it, woman?
恥ずかしい？
No, because it's you.
そう？ちょっと残念ね。
I felt her breath in my ear. Her warmth ran all the way down my body.
私が大学に行って寂しかったでしょ。
Yeah,
ごめんね。でもおかげで7年間も 孤独に耐えられたわ。
Because you studied at university? Yeah, was all she said. She continued.
人前で声を上げることもできず、道を歩けば目をそらされて、怪我をしても誰も助けてくれない。社会の中にいるのに、まるで牢獄に閉じ込められているようだったわ。
The jail cell known as solitude.
一人で生きるのって本当に大変ね。しみじみ思ったわ。こうやって誰かに触れられるだけで、こんなにも幸せを感じられるなんて。私は大学で学んだことを基礎に、この7年で学んだの。
You learned how to overcome solitude? One-chan paused, then spoke.
社会の破り方を。こうやって瞳を閉じて、誰かを思うの。世の中なんて、自分の味方一つで地獄にも天国にもなるわ。でも基本的に人は弱いから、いつでもその眼差しを自分だけに向けてしまうの。
I can't say you're wrong. So that's why you close your eyes?
弱い自分を見ないように。ね。瞳を閉じた世界には、ルールも規則もないわ。体っていう枠すら超えて、空を飛ぶことも、地の果てまで歩くこともできるでしょ。
It sounds almost like a fairy tale.
だから、誰かを思うの。現実逃避じゃないの。あの人に向かって進むんだっていう意志を持つの。それは、言葉にはできない圧倒的な力。
You're right about that. Because words were just another rule dictated by society.
私の知っているケンは、心根の優しい、いい子。
Would someone as gentle as he was, abandon their friends? One-chan interrupted me with another breath upon my ear. Sorry. I guess that meant shut up and listen.
頭が良すぎて、いろいろとごちゃごちゃしたものが見えすぎていたのよ。
I had been weak. I'd never been able to calm down. I'd always been in a panic, trying to see through attacks that weren't even there.
シャキッとしなさい。今ここにあなたと私がいるでしょ。救いたい仲間がいるんでしょ。それ以外にどんな現実があるっていうの？辛い過去を見る瞳には自分だけしか映らないわ。それは弱さの証でしかないのだから。
Her words were quiet, yet powerful. Finally, she fell silent. She must have been closing her eyes, feeling something that you couldn't put into words. One-chan,
ケン、
I wanted to stay like this forever. I'll give it a try. Use the present for the sake of the future. She laughed and then... My lips melted for just a moment. Come on, game! I mean, I guess technically it's fine because she's not our blood-related sister.
すべてが終わって。
Sorta, maybe, I don't know. Should I question that? Maybe not? Maybe yes? I guess this game, it kind of fits the game though, right? In any other game, you would probably like question it. But this is supposed to be a game that questions society. So it's not all that weird to see this out of nowhere. In a hentai game or like, you know, a nukige, you'd probably also not question it. But in a story game, you'd usually question these sort of weird things. And again, Japan is notorious for liking incest in their doujins, so I can't say I'm surprised. Her voice warmed its wormed its way into my ear.
それでも私と一緒に生きる道を選んでくれるなら
Sorry, Ririko.
その時はキスよりもっと私を可愛がってね。
I have to say that Ririko is a good character, but she lacked the development that Natsumi had. Natsumi was so impactful back when I was a kid that I felt like it was impossible for me to not choose her. It was impossible for the current me to even not choose her because, gosh, is it even possible to not choose her? Considering how it is, how the story was built. Then again, I'm just justifying my actions. I'm just like rationalizing that there's no way. Morning had arrived. We were holding one last meeting before springing into action.
という作戦だ。いいな。
You haven't said anything yet.
伝わらないのか。僕らには言葉なんていらないはずだろ。
Better to just ignore him.
一応分かってるけど確認した方がいいよね。うっかり忘れられると困るしね。うっかりさんなのは相変わらずみたいね。
I do feel like Ririko is super smart though. And I do like her about that. I do like that about her. That's a bad sentence structure. We're short on time. Let's review our strategy.
まずみんなに念頭に置いてほしいのは予定外にホウズキと会ったら逃げること。
姉上の言う通り、最優先事項は戦うことではなく夏美ちゃんを助けることだ。
Yeah.
夏美ちゃんは学園の地下牢に幽閉されている。地下牢までの基本的な警備は私が見た限り剣なら突破できると思う。
I didn't come back from the southern conflict just because I got lucky.
問題は怖い人だよね、とっつぁん。そのために私たちで注意を引きつけるんでしょ。私の準備はバッチリだよ。私は今から用意しなきゃ。そうね。
Toka and Oneichan nodded to one another. Apparently they had formed a little conspiracy of sorts.
委員長もサチさんも気をつけてくださいよ。
任しといて。大丈夫だってば。
I was worried. However, there was no denying the fact that both of them had grown stronger since the cancellation of their obligations. Can I trust you guys?
それはこっちのセリフだよ。ケン。
さっちゃんとトウカちゃんに手伝ってもらって私がホウズキを引きつける。その間にケンが夏美ちゃんを助け出す。夏美ちゃんの安全は磯野くんが確保する。そして
I'll take on Hozuki. I gulped and tightened my fist.
ケン、大丈夫。きっとできるわ。
Yeah. Thanks, One-chan.
よし。それじゃあここからは別々だ。それぞれ準備して夜の処刑時刻前には学園に行く。と。みんな自分にできることをやろ
よーし、やっちゃうぞ。
Not even something as serious as this could take the wind out of Sachi's sails, it would seem. She left us and began heading toward the school.
私も行くわ。
You haven't forgotten anything, have you?
もちろん。
Toka showed no signs of panic. It could very well have been a different story under the surface, though. That said, she was walking quite calmly in the direction of the school.
お父さんの仇を討とう。
Huh?
なんて考えちゃダメよ。
Yeah.
それは私たちの望むものじゃない。
We couldn't afford to go at this with the wrong mindset. We needed to rescue Natsumi before anything else.
お父さんの目指したものと同じものを目指すんだよ。
One-chan grinned at me and then headed toward the school. Isono sighed. What's wrong? Getting cold feet?
う。おいケン。
Hmm?
この7年間後悔していたのはお前だけじゃない。あの時俺に 幸さんの性格まで含めた冷静な判断力さえあれば今こんなことにはなっていなかった。
Yeah, maybe that's true. However, Sono,
分かっている。ただレバーは意味がない。この作戦は成功すると決めている。僕自身がね。
sounds good.
頼むぞゲン。
He had placed his faith in me. Isono too dashed off in the direction of the school. Looks like everyone trusts me, huh? Things wouldn't turn out like they had back then. Nachan, wait just a little while longer. I placed my father's inheritance into my pocket, readied my knife, and stepped outside. I left my trusty partner, that good old Duralumin case, behind for once. I watched the town for a bit, then headed to the school, a bit ahead of time. The hell's up with this crowd? Why do they all look so curious? Do they know a person is about to be killed here? A guillotine was prepared in a school courtyard. It seemed my novels were coming to life once more. Well then, I forced my way through the crowd. As I was doing so, I went over the best route from the classroom to the prison one last time. All of them knew my face. I couldn't afford to stand out. Sachi and Toka were wanted too, but knowing Pops, he was probably only interested in me. Seriously though, I wasn't going to be able to do anything all by my lonesome. Oh shit. I hastily hid among the crowd. Damn, that was close. I thought they had me. There was a member of the security police on patrol. I suppose it was no surprise that the security was tight. The gate of the school was wide open after all. I felt someone looking at me.
もしかして
Hold that thought.
森
I clapped my hand over her mouth. We fought our way back through the tide of people. Guess you're doing okay then.
ええ、なんとか。そっちはどう？
Things could be a lot better. The guards were congregating in the area around the school, so I would probably be able to speak to her at my leisure if we got a little further away. This wasn't exactly the time for leisure though.
トウカはどこにいるの？もうすぐ日向さんの公開処刑が行われてしまうみたいだし、何かするつもりなの？森田くん。
Calm down. Only took her one breath. Yeah, never thought I'd meet you here though.
それは私もよ。一体どうするつもりなの？
Kyoko-san, Toka's safe.
ええ、分かっているわ。あなたと一緒なのだからね。
She smiled with relief. That said, she's about to dive face first into a pretty sticky situation.
それはどういうことなの？森田くん。説明して。
Not just her, Sachi, One-chan, everyone is about to partake in some risky business in order to rescue Natsumi.
お姉ちゃん？
That's right. She's been watching over me this whole time.
リリコちゃんのこと？
Yes, that's right. Her eyes grew misty with relief. I guess she'd be an acquaintance of yours too then.
ええ、リリコちゃんとは都会にいた時に。でもお姉ちゃんって。
I'm Higuchi Ken, the son of the revolutionary Higuchi Saburo.
あなたが。
Kyoko-san took it surprisingly well. Ririko is the successor to my father's ambition. I think that the people in the society who have borne obligations, people such as Ririko, carry the seat at which can change it. And that's why we're fighting. For the sake of protecting that seed. Of course, I'm the only one who's gonna get involved in any close combat. We're going to try and fight against society.
森田くん、三郎さんみたいね。
Huh?
こんなことってあるのかしら。
Kyoko-san seemed kind of happy.
私が大学に入ったきっかけは樋口三郎の思想だったわ。都会で内乱が起こる前はよくリリコちゃんにトウカと遊んでもらったし、
I see.
リリコちゃんが樋口三郎の娘だと知ったのは少し後だったけど、あなたが樋口三郎の息子だったとはね。
I'd like you to place your trust in us. We're not putting ourselves into danger over nothing. So if you can, place your trust in Toka. me and everyone else.
日向さんをお友達を助けようとしてる子だもの。それは間違ってないはずよ。
Kyoko-san gave a gentle smile. Thank you very much. I'll be off then.
私も行くわ。見届けたいの。
We arrived back at the school. I left Kyoko-san behind and made my way through the crowd once more. There's more people than before. Well, I guess he had ordered the entire town to attend and all. I wonder if everyone else is proceeding according to schedule. Maybe they had unexpected developments of their own, like my little rendezvous with Kyoko-san. I didn't want to stand out too much, but... There's only one person I'm worried about, man! Unless you can be worried about multiple people. You can't. I'm worried about Isono. Sorry, my dudes. It'd be too dangerous to try and search around for everyone else. Nachan. I noticed that my palms were sweating. My vision was blurry. Natsumi's warm palm. I would grab hold of it. I would lead everyone to safety. And this time, it wouldn't just be a delusion. Wait for me. I glanced at the classroom in Hosuke's room, but the lights weren't on. I guess that meant that Hosuke was standing guard at the prison as we had thought. I quietly bided my time. The night grew ever darker. The uniformed men patrolling the area around the guillotine began shouting. Guess it's almost time. The stage for Natsumi's death was nearly complete. Damn it. Please, One-chan. Everyone. All of those assembled felt a chill run through them. The night sky was perfectly clear, tinged here and there with stars. An utter coldness slumbered within the hearts of those who had gathered here. A coldness which the encroachment of autumn could not be blamed for. No. There was a certain event which was responsible for this deep-seated insecurity, and it was fast approaching. A bizarre sort of stage had been erected upon the grounds of the school. Its base stood waist high. Could this be a way of causing the criminal's very body to jut out amid the crowd? The surface of the stage was fortified with stone. A small set of stairs adorned one of its corners. And in the center of the stage was a monstrous contraption made of wood and iron. Two pillars arose from the floor of the platform, with a solid cube of wooden material standing between them. A blade was fastened betwixt the pillars. It was most likely meant to descend down the slim grooves in said pillars. The crowd stood transfixed at this awesome spectacle. Not a single person knew freedom from that most wicked sensation, a sensation of dread coursing through one's veins. The beast upon the platform glistened hungrily in the moonlight, eager for its prey. One of the policemen attending to the beast spoke up. A stir arose in reaction to his deep voice. By this point, the tension of the assembly had nearly boiled over. You see, the people who stood gathered before this inhumanity were teachers, local policemen, government staffers, figureheads of the town, and all of them recalled the rebellion from 7 years ago with crystal clarity. Today, their country town was a beautiful, pleasant place to live, a place where sunflowers bloom in abundance. However, a vicious history of bloodshed lurked behind a veneer of peace. Veneer? I think it's veneer. The hell? It showed me like... it showed me something from teeth instead of what the heck is a veneer. Oh. Bereaved families had established a memorial monument in the center of the town after the rebellion. It was a truly splendid sight. They had even called in sculptors from outside of town to assist in its creation. A special high-class individual who had been working with the town's administration at the time had approved it. The installation of this monument was not without controversy, however, for a phrase of much dispute had been carved upon its base. The mistakes of the past are not to be repeated. Were those words speaking to the people of this town? Or perhaps they were directed at the country itself? Such formalities aside, one thing was clear. Grieving families were being censured. The quarrel that arose from this phrase quickly escalated into a violent affair. There stood a stone coffin built to honor the lives of the nearly 5,000 who had perished, and it stood no more. There stood a marble mausoleum into which the likeness of woman's womb had been carved, and it stood no more. Not even the checkpoint at the town's entrance was spared from tragedy. Currently, it claimed inspection of produce at its raising the tar. I think that's how you say raising the tar. Or raising the tur. At least that's how I thought it sounds like in my mind for the longest time, ever since I played Shin Megami Tensei games. However, in the past, it had been nothing more than a military relay point, replete with soldiers, meant to preclude the possibility of another such uprising. Many children had lost their parents in the rebellion. The government had established orphanages in this town, as well as many others. Not even a decade went by before they were repurposed into school dormitories, governmental lodgings, etc. Of course, there was also no shortage of children who had been irrevocably emotionally scarred by the shock of seeing their families slaughtered before their very eyes. They had it easy compared to the children of other races, however. Discrimination becomes more severe the more fragmented a society becomes. And this society was no exception. Foreign children seeking shelter set their sights on locales outside of the town and subsequently headed toward the border. And they did not return. The general assigned to the area said that he had absolutely no idea as to their ultimate whereabouts. Nothing was written about it in the town's history books. And that was the end of it, except for the rotten stench that drifted in from the sunflower field, and the mountain of children's corpses, of course. These men and women carried a deep distrust toward their government and its policies. However, they were met with violence no matter where they turned. Violence that could affect them if they did not bow down to its perpetrators. Reality is an overwhelming sort of thing, after all. One's ideals quake in its very presence. And so, gradually, ever so gradually, the bud of resistance withered away. Written appeals to the government gathered dust, while the guns that were hidden away beneath the citizens' beds gathered rust. 7 years had passed. Their doubts had been forced to abate. Why? They had even started to feel appreciative. Wasn't it wonderful that they had withdrawn the army? Wasn't it wonderful that they had established the Amnesty Festival? These people lived on quietly, in servility. So what if their families had been massacred? So what if their homes had been burned to the ground? Those were not things that they could have avoided. The man roared once more.
公開処刑は予定通りに執行される。義務違反を犯した罪人、日向夏美は間もなくここへ到着する。
Hinata Natsumi, a girl in the crowd, gasped upon hearing that name. He was the classmate who had betrayed Natsumi's trust several years prior. She had been the person responsible for making Natsumi into a laughingstock merely for the amusement of others. She was a weak girl. She was yet unaware of her own crime, the crime of murdering Natsumi's social life. And so she thought, why, they didn't have to go this far. She had lost her father in the rebellion herself. He had left alongside Iguchi Saburo, assuring her that they were doing the right thing. Her entire family had praised him for his nobility and for his courage. Unfortunately, doing the right thing was enough to bring him back. For you see, he died doing the right thing. So ever since she was young, she had harbored a certain hatred for Natsumi, the girl who always seemed to be doing the right thing. And yet even someone filled with such hatred could not bring herself to condemn Natsumi to such a fate. She stared up at the guillotine and was met with a staggering trepidation. The officer standing upon the stage raised both of his hands into the air.
歴史の証人となるべく集まった者たちへ罪状の確認と特殊刑に至った経緯を説明する
His exaggerated gestures and speech patterns were not unlike those of a jester.
7年前の内乱の後日向夏美は異性を騙し続け多額の金銭などをせしめまた言葉巧みに詐欺を働き多くの被害者を出した罪に問われそれを自白により認めている
It was a small town. There wasn't a person among them who was not already intimately familiar with the story of the girl who had been burdened with prohibition of falling in love. More than half of them held big doubts about the charges brought against her as well.
その後公正指導のもとに社会復帰を目指すが法典によって定められた内容を遵守する素振りを見せながら心の底では異性に取り入る隙を虎視眈々と狙って今日に至る
Also among the crowd was a woman who had once been Natsumi's homeroom teacher. She was on friendly terms with One Kyoko due to their shared passion for the pursuit of knowledge. She also possessed a strong sense of justice. When Natsumi had been bullied in the past, she had taken pride in the fact that she had supported her. Thanks to her efforts, Natsumi had been able to attend school every day. In addition, Natsumi was quite well behaved and received excellent grades. It was obvious that society was at fault for the fact that her obligation had yet to be cancelled. She watched the man with crossed arms, nurturing a petty sense of indignation all the while.
3日前日向夏美は特別高等人候補生と身体的に接触しまた義務違反を犯し異性に好意を抱いていることを告白した
Consternation. What the heck is that word? Feelings of anxiety. Okay. Dismay, basically. Okay. Consternation spread through the crowd like a wave. Hinata Natsumi had touched the opposite sex of her own accord? That Hinata Natsumi? Even though she was always so timid? Even though she had always recoiled at the very presence of men?
顔の表情涙立ち居振る舞いスキンシップ服装の露出の計算その他あらゆる感情を揺さぶる狡猾で計算された言動は今後の構成への希望を一切断ち切るものである
The people began to exchange glances. They began to speak among themselves. Had she truly been the victim of a false charge? Her obligation had not been an unjustified burden? Perhaps this man's words are true. Perhaps she truly is a contemptible whore.
本来なら強制収容所へ送還される状況ではあるが我々国民を代表する特別高等人の選出試験において日向夏美は自らの義務解消のため候補生をたぶらかし不当に義務より解放されるべく働きかけた
The fact that the town had spent several days in a state of disarray due to its occupation was beginning to seem as if it were Natsumi's fault.
この罪は極めて重い
The men and women gathered here had forgotten their past.
従来の法典の枠をも超えるこの重罪に対し我々国民の良識は毅然とした罪人への処置を求めるものである
The fantasy of a public execution had become reality, an imposing reality.
特別高等人大月正臣様のご提案により特殊刑の執行が申請され受理された
The gossip continued without end. Natsumi was in the wrong. No, she was in the right. She was in the right, but she was foolish.
そして今ここに至ったものである
Gossip as they might, it would not accomplish anything.
間もなく刑が執行されるそれまで静粛に待機せよ
The jester stepped down from the platform. His duty of riling the crowd up accomplished successfully. All at once, the gossip of the crowd ceased. Had this been orchestrated beforehand? In any case, their discomfort had now reached its zenith.
冗談じゃないって
And yet, one girl dared to speak. One girl dared to push her way through the crowd.
嘘ばっかじゃん何言ってんの今言ったの全部あんたらが仕向けたことじゃん
The girl's name was Mitsuhiro Sachi. She had clearly reached the end of her patience. This much was written upon her face, at least. She forced her way through the teeming mass of humanity, finally arriving at the execution platform.
なんだ貴様。
なんだはこっちのセリフだよ。なんだよこれ。夏美が何したって言うのよ。
光弘幸だな。
そうだよ。
わざわざしゃしゃり出てくるとはいい度胸。
友達を助けに来たんだよ。
Several policemen quickly surrounded Sachi. They gradually closed in on her, brandishing guns.
へえ、これがギロチンかい？ぜひ家の庭に欲しいな。
A man suddenly approached the platform. The man's gun now spun in the direction of Isono. The cheer in his voice remained undimmed.
僕は爆薬を持っているんだよ。
Isono was dealing with security police trained by Hosuke Masaomi himself. As such, he did not believe that such a bluff would be very effective. He wanted to buy time, however.
爆薬は次元装置付きでね。僕の意思とは関係なくボムだよ。
Oh, sorry.
爆薬は次元装置付きでね。僕の意思とは関係なくボムだよ。ボム。
The security police ignored Isono's remarks and grabbed Sachi's arm.
ちょっと。
貴様もだ。
With Sachi under control, the men advanced toward Isono.
前髪には触るなよ。
黙れ。何がおかしい？
犬がキャンキャン騒がしいな。
The look in his eyes was absolutely blood-chilling. The fearsome might of the man who had escaped involvement by faking insanity, of the man who had disposed of the former dormitory manager, dwelt within those eyes. For the past 7 years, this man had obeyed no one. He had merely waited and waited. He had waited for the return of Higuchi Ken. He had made sure never to overlook his preparations. He was the man who had devised the plan to rescue Natsumi. And then finally, the curtain came down. The massive curtain hung from the rooftop of the school building. The sunflower, the symbol of justice, was emblazoned upon it. This flag overwhelmed the onlookers with dignity as it fluttered gracefully in the wind. Such was their awe that they could do nothing but stare.
出た出た。やったね。
Sachi stood among the crowd, stood out. She took pride in her work, thinking, this ain't half bad, even for me. The sunflower she had painted stole the crowd's breath away. It was a true masterpiece, a work born of the utmost technique. She had spent only 2 days on it. 2 days spent doing nothing but painting, without even a pause for sleep or for nourishment. Truth be told, Sachi was not accustomed to painting at such a scale. Of course, there's no way that she could cut corners with such a piece. Earlier that morning, Enichi had entered the room where she had sat painting. He had posed her a simple question. Will we make it? You've only got an hour left. We have to get this thing going in an hour from now. Kenichi watched on in concern. Sachi was a bit pensive. She thought back to the time when she had failed to protect Mana. And then she spoke. She spoke firmly, goading herself into action. We've still got an entire hour left.
皆さん、私の声が聞こえますか？
A figure was standing on the other side of the curtain. She had been standing there the entire time. Certainly, but not a soul had noticed her until now. Sachi's painting was simply that mesmerizing.
サチさん、今のうちだ。
Even the public security police, the men who had withstood Hosuke Masaomi's hellish training, stood dumbfounded. Isono and Sachi took advantage of their surprise to slip back into the crowd.
皆さん聞いてください。
The woman seemed to have a mic in her hands. A calm voice reverberated throughout the grounds, fueled by the speakers set up throughout the area.
私は樋口三郎の娘、樋口リリ子です。現在では極刑を負っている身です。
Maximum penalty. Higuchi Saburo. The crowd, which had been so placid only moments prior, was now in quite a state of disorder. Everyone present stared down at the ground, or allowed the sunflower painting to steal their eyes once more. After all, it was a crime to acknowledge a person with a maximum penalty. Even if you were to see them, even if you were to hear them,
久しぶりに弟と共に故郷へ帰ってきました。入り口のひまわりは相変わらず綺麗で誇らしい限りです。
however, in this situation, he had no choice but to listen to her voice.
私はこの7年間でたくさんのものを見ました。
The people had no choice but to pretend as if they had heard nothing, just as their parents and teachers had taught them to.
私は極刑を受けた身だったので交流を持つことはできませんでしたが、さまざまな考え方の人を見ました。いろいろな事件に出くわしました。そしてその度に疑問が湧いてきました。
Eventually, a special high-class individual would come along and take her away.
なぜだろう、どうしてだろう、何度考えても社会の下す決定に納得できない私がいました。
But the woman's words began to pierce them, bit by bit, as they stared at the symbol of justice laid out before them.
皆さんはどうでしょうか。
They were forbidden to respond to that question.
考えてほしい。浮かんだ疑問をむやむやにしないでほしい。思いを言葉に乗せてほしい。言葉が発せられたなら耳を傾けてほしい。そう思い今この場に立っています。
A deep voice suddenly interrupted her. The execution will proceed according to schedule. The anxious crowd began to hold hopes that the security police would get the situation straightened out shortly.
私の見てきたこと、聞いてきたことを話します。私はきっと皆さんの心が私の言葉に共感する部分があると信じています。なぜなら私はこの町に来て弟と共に偽らざる感情を携えたまっすぐな瞳を見たからです。
Higuchi Saburo's daughter was nothing but a pest to these people who had lived in complacence for so long. It was because of Higuchi Saburo that so much blood had been spilled. And yet she preached further incitement?
どうか皆さん、私の声に耳を傾けてください。
Who are you kidding? If we listen to the words of a daughter of a criminal, our peaceful lives shall flee from us. They finally began to tear their eyes away from the brilliant sunflower. Now they looked toward the men standing upon the platform, seeking salvation. We have a nuisance here. She might be bowing to us out of desperation, but I don't feel like getting involved with a criminal.
待ってください。みんな聞いてください。
Higuchi Ririko continued imploring the crowd to pay her heed. They were keeping a pretty tight watch on the other side of the grounds. I saw an opportunity when One-chan began her speech, however. I carefully broke the first floor window and stepped into the classroom. Whew. Was the infiltration a success? It didn't look like anyone had noticed me yet. I needed to act in accordance with the developments outside. I hid myself in the dark classroom and waited. One-chan's voice reached my ears. Higuchi Ririko continued recounting our past as one bearing the maximum penalty in a flat tone.
私はかつて足を怪我した移民の少年を見ました。彼は道端に倒れて動けずじっとしていました。そこに女の子がやってきました。彼女は少年を見るやすぐに家から救急箱を持ってきて包帯を巻き医者へ連れて行きました。その女の子は医者から嫌味を言われ両親に叱られました。助けた少年はお金に変わりました。
She had encountered so many things, and all of them had led her to vexation. She was unable to lend a helping hand. She was unable to even speak out. She continued to allow her pent-up emotions to spill forth.
恋人を暴漢から守ろうとした青年がいました。彼は感情のあまり相手に重傷を負わせてしまいました。暴漢はその後特別高等人候補生の医師による医療ミスで死亡しましたが、死因は青年の殴打とされました。正当防衛は立証されず、青年は子供を持てない義務を負いました。助けられた女性は彼と結ばれるため、すでに妊娠していた子供を下ろしました。
Man, that's harsh. I actually forgot about this. This is really harsh. This event had happened within this very town. She had known that someone within the crowd would react to its mention.
私はこれが間違っていると思います。
She continued to describe events which anyone would decry as being wrong.
病気がちな老人がいました。医者から死期を宣告された家族は看病のため仕事の休暇を申請しました。この経験は皆さんにもあるはずです。無論申請は却下されました。若い日の社会貢献度が高い老人でない限り、余生を家族と過ごすことはできません。無駄な時間として処理されますから。しかし余生を幸せに送れるのは特別高等人をはじめとする国の役員だけです。
Higuchi Ririko shed light upon the country's crimes. She spoke with great earnestness of the ways in which their crooked society forced responsibility onto the individual. I snuck up behind a guard and knocked him out. So far, One-chan's information has been accurate. The entrance to the basement was up ahead. One-chan said that there should be 4 guards around this corner. Although, if our plan is working, then they should have been sent outside to help calm down the crowd. I tiptoed through the hallway. I heard whispers. I peered around the corner. There were still 4 men on guard, which meant that there was a good chance that Pops hadn't even started to move yet. If I didn't keep up with what was happening outside, then I would encounter Pops before I even had the chance to rescue Natsumi.
階段前の教室が地下への扉にも近くて待機に向いてるわ。
For the time being, I looked for a spot to hide myself in.
すべての学問は哲学から始まりました。それはすべて豊かに生きるためのものです。いかに己の生を全うするかを考えないのであれば、絵を描くことも料理を作ることも人を愛することもすべて無意味です。
The atmosphere that spread throughout the grounds was now frigid. The crowd had fallen into complete chaos. Many of them were now paying attention to the figure upon the rooftop, only pretending to cast their gaze upon the sunflower. The eyes of the security police emanated such terror that many found it easier to stare down at the ground, however.
我々は無意味なことに耐えて生きることはできません。無意味なこと、例えば穴を掘ってその穴をまた自ら埋める、それがあなたの仕事だとそう言われたら、きっと皆さんは生きる力を失うでしょう。
A variety of reactions had flickered into life within the crowd. There were those who were simply annoyed with the bladder, wishing for it to come to an end. And there were those who had adopted an air of much consideration.
皆さんはどうお思いですか？日々の皆さんの営みに意味を見出せていますか？意味を作らされていませんか？気づかないうちに穴を掘らされていないでしょうか？その穴を埋める毎日に満足させられていませんか？
Thoughts burst forth. Just what does she mean by something meaningless? Actually, wouldn't this situation be a perfect example of it? Yeah, that's right. What meaning is there in forcing us to pay witness to such barbarism?
この町は内乱の時に一度焼かれ、皆さんの親族の方々にも多くの犠牲者が出たと聞いています。皆さんのご両親、あるいは祖父母の方々はなぜ私の父樋口三郎に協力してくれたのでしょうか。
They would not understand why even if prompted with a question. All they knew was that Higuchi Saburo had garnered enthusiastic support. But when the dust had settled, he had come under fire. The people of this nation were caught in an invisible current. They had praised Higuchi Saburo without knowing why. And then they had slandered him without knowing why.
この町には多くの義務を負った人々が滞在しています。皆さんはご存知でしょうか。彼らの多くは内乱のずっと前から我々の祖先が負っていた義務を継承させられた人たちです。鉱山発掘の義務が形を変え、義務を負っている理由が捏造されました。ほんの数十年前の話です。
There were dozens of rehabilitees within the crowd, and her latest words sent them into a furor. Most of them had been born bearing unjust obligations. Some of them had to perform public services without compensation, while others had to serve longer terms of duty in the military than average citizens.
僕でも知らないことだ。さすが姉上。
A voice rose forth from within the crowd, a voice calling the people to action. Perhaps they had merely been waiting They had been merely awaiting. I think I fucked that up. Perhaps they had merely been awaiting the right timing. There we go. The public security police started to move. The situation would worsen if they let the instigator be. Several men began making their way through the crowd, in accordance with standard procedure. The police violently pushed men and women out of their way. The instigator had known that the situation had the capability to provoke a riot.
皆さんはご先祖様に対してどうお考えでしょうか。余計なことをしてくれたもんだとお思いでしょうか。なぜこんな身に生まれたのかと、そうお嘆きでしょうか。
The hearts of the rehabilitees ached. For their entire lives, they had been taught that their obligations were the fault of their parents. They had been taught to consider their burdens as something natural, thanks to the country's policy of involvement.
私はそういった経緯と同様に連座性によって極刑を負いましたが、父を恨んだことも生まれた好みを呪ったこともありません。
They did not know if the woman before them spoke the truth. They did, however, know that she was Higuchi Saburo's daughter, which meant that she might possess information which the denizens of this town were not privy to. Once more, they would come to accept the words decrying society's evils as the truth, without possessing any particular reason for doing so.
私は父の言葉を直接耳にする機会が何度かありましたが、皆さんはご親族のお言葉を直接聞くことができず、別れ別れになってしまったと思います。
Her voice was indifferent, and yet it was brimming over with a certain power. The people standing before Higuchi Ririko began to feel a poignant sense of urgency.
ですが、先の内乱で倒れられた方、あるいは捕らえられてしまった方々の言葉は、最前線にて戦っていた父のもとに手紙として届けられており、
Higuchi Ririko's sagacity? The quality of being sagacious? Okay, I guess it's from the word sage, meaning she has wisdom, okay. Made itself apparent. Her speech now contained content that was relevant, not only to the rehabilitees, but to everyone gathered before her.
父から私へ預けられた手紙の数々は、私が極刑を負う際に没収されてしまいましたが、私はその手紙の内容をほとんど覚えています。忘れ
crowd had now become her audience. Her voice did not merely reach their ears. It penetrated them. Thoughts of longing for one's lost family now occupied the minds of the majority of those gathered. Anxiety continued to mount among the crowd.
今ようやく私の父と皆さんのご親族の間で交わされたやり取りをお伝えできます。どうか聞いてください。皆さんへの遺言です。
A slight conflict suddenly arose. While searching for Sono, a member of the public security force pushed an old woman who had been ardently listening to Higuchi Ririko's words to the ground. And that was the spark which lit the fire. It had grown quite noisy outside. I remained still, waiting for an opportunity to present itself.
お疲れ様です。報告しろ。異常ありません。屋上へ向かう。
Alright. Hozuki was finally going to change positions.
ただ、どこぞにネズミが潜んでいるやもしれんな。
I held my breath, praying that Hozuki wouldn't discover me.
例えば、この扉に近い教室の中など。
Oh, Nei-chan.
森田はいないか？
I mean,
階段前の教室が地下への扉にも近くて待機に向いてるわ。
nice work,
だ
Onei-chan.
から絶対にそこで待機しちゃダメよ。
I'd concealed myself along the outside of the window.
確認しておく。ここに森田が現れた場合、お前たちの役割は時間を稼ぐことです。よろしい。
By time? Why? Was he gone? Why would he just buy time and not just shoot me dead? Even with all this stuff happening, I heard the sound of his cane hitting against the floor grow more and more distant. If I was gonna do it, now was my chance. The people of the crowd now recognized the gesture for what he was. It would prove impossible for them to drag Hinata Natsumi out upon the platform presently. The mood of this undertaking had transformed absolutely. A youth attempted to accost a sturdy man wearing a uniform. Criticisms of the nation blared forth from a woman standing nearby. And yet even now, there were those among the crowd who were quietly acting as if nothing were happening. These were the people who were most at risk of being thrust headfirst into the heat of the moment, as it were. All of this was the fault of Higuchi Saburo's daughter.
お伝えします。
Higuchi Ririko disclosed the contents of their letters, her voice an anchor amid the maelstrom.
三郎さんの元へ行く私を許してほしい。私はこのまま命を落とす可能性もあるが、それでも未来のため、お前とまだお腹の中にいる子が幸せに生きていける社会を作るために、私は行くことを決意した。
The people's very souls were shaken as she reads out the names affixed to those letters. Their fathers and their brothers who had marched alongside Higuchi Saburo not expressed regret for their course of action.
ここに至って考えるのは、ただお前と子供の幸せだけだ。もうすぐ冬だから、風邪をひかないようにね。無事に子供を産んでほしい。それでは、行ってきます。
The people that the members of the crowd had so cherished had set off toward their deaths of their own volition. Even having tried to convince them otherwise would have proven truly absurd. And despite this, Higuchi Ririko's audience had somehow forgotten that they had shown these determined people off with smiling faces. The teacher who had once served as Natsumi's homeroom teacher recalled her lover, who had participated in the uprising. He had been an extraordinarily brave man. She desired to live justly, just as he once had.
耳を塞ぐなんてできるはずがないでしょ。
She lost herself in thought. Right beside her, however, was her esteemed colleague, One Kyoko, the woman raising her voice against society. The sight of Kyoko's tightly clenched hand filled her with an indescribable sort of agony. For this woman had always lived a just life. She had been recognized as possessing academic excellence by the school and by the Board of Education itself. Why then was she standing silently, merely crossing her arms? Why then were her legs trembling? Why then would she not seem to cast her gaze upward? A member of the security police advanced upon Kyoko. He growled at her, brandishing his baton in her direction. Kyoko did not so much as flinch. Her fellow teacher found this quite enigmatic indeed. Kyoko had been avoiding abstract or idealistic topics in her discussions with her as of late. As recently as the previous semester, however, the two of them had been able to enjoy heated discussions of such matters. The policeman assaulted Kyoko's shoulder with his baton. Her colleague acted as if she had seen nothing. She merely crossed her arms once more. Her education had taught her that such a blow would likely result in a broken bone. The man's baton aimed for Kyoko once more. Her colleague began pondering Kyoko's situation. It would appear that she had been getting along with her daughter quite admirably these past few weeks. She always seemed to have a smile plastered upon her face, and she occupied her free time with readings from cooking and family finance books. Truth be told, Kyoko was much more highly regarded by the students than she was herself. She felt an acute sense of envy for Kyoko. Their eyes met. In the next moment, her colleague found herself extending her own arms. She grabbed Kyoko's shoulder, shielding her from the baton's cruel descent. And suddenly, she knew not but a splitting pain in the back of her head. Kyoko shouted out her name. However, she needed no lifeline to our world. Her consciousness was perfectly clear. She had forgotten all that stemmed from her refined philosophy. She had ceased to criticize her society with words alone. She had done something stupid. And for some reason, that knowledge gave her a sense of satisfaction.
お母さんへ。寒くなってきましたが、お体は大丈夫ですか？娘は元気でいるでしょうか？元気が良すぎて、転んだり、怪我などしていないか心配です。
Higuchi Ririko announced the name of the girl who this man had been inquiring about. A girl in the crowd who had been staring at her feet suddenly snapped her neck upward, so that she could gaze in the direction of the sunflower. Somehow, the sunflower reminded her of Hinata Natsumi. She didn't like that very much, and yet she found herself unable to avert her eyes. She felt as if her father were speaking directly to her. She could not quell the rush of emotion which had arisen within her.
もうすぐ娘の誕生日なので、洋服を買ってあげたいのですが、都会の街は戒厳令が敷かれていて、出歩くこともできません。でも、それももうすぐ解かれるでしょう。お母さんたちが安心して暮らせるようになるまで、私はこちらで頑張ります。
So what? Father never came back after all. Society didn't let us live blessed, peaceful lives. I don't want some stupid dress to celebrate my birthday anyway. The girl looked about her. They were all just a bunch of morons. They had gotten drunk on the atmosphere. That's why they were so worked up over these damn letters. I agree. That's actually what I would think if I were in their situation. Not gonna lie. Look, some of them were even crying. Hell, that woman on the rooftop was probably just feeding them lies to begin with. Exactly what my thought is. To a T. The girl sneered, her mind flushed with negativity. Right now, most of the people at this gathering were clamoring in criticism of the public execution. They were shouting for the sake of Hinata Natsumi, driven by nothing but a groundless sense of indignation. But she was different. Back when she was younger, everyone in her class had supported Hinata Natsumi. She had been the only one not to go along with them. She was smarter than that. The thought flashing through her mind were a poor substitute of her feeble legs. The next thing she knew, the trampled ground was before her eyes. It smelled like soil. She attempted to smile, to chide herself for her foolishness, but she could not manage it. For some reason or another, she could keenly taste the unmistakable flavor of salt. In the end, it seemed that she was merely lonely. She wanted to see her father. However, she had the feeling that she would not be able to see him unless she apologized to Hinata Natsumi beforehand. And so, the girl continued sobbing, surrounded by sheer pandemonium.
貴様だ
Members of the security police began pouring out of the school building. Hozuki Masaomi had not yet granted them the permission to fire. In fact, their current instructions were rather unreasonable. What was their superior thinking? Mr. Hozuki was usually a much more ruthless man. For you see, he had been ordered to keep casualties to a minimum, even in the event of a riot. They had received other curious orders as well. For example, if Mr. Hozuki were incapacitated, they were to issue a heightened state of alert, and to ensure that Morita Kenichi and his companions could not escape the town. Going to such lengths for simple risk management demoralized the public security police. They felt as if Mr. Hozuki had decided that the execution would be a failure from the start. They reluctantly helped their fire, all the while attempting to subdue the raging townsfolk. However, they were severely outnumbered. A mob had already formed. It did not seem possible to suppress it without firearms.
このうねりはもう止められない。抗うことなどできない。あんたらのボスが言う社会のうねりってやつだろ。
私が見た内乱で政府に意見を申し立てた人々はみんな家族の幸せを考えていました。
おかしいことなんてないわ。
皆さんに生きてほしいと私は思います。望んだのは生きる幸せを得ることなのです。
Cries of agreement arose from within the crowd. Not a single one of these people had desired to witness a public execution. They had treated its presence as something inevitable. However, even despite their qualms,
この町のひまわりは我々と共に何度も踏み潰されました。
the people looked to the sunflower hanging from the roof, and in doing so, they looked upon their past. The people could not simply forgive. They were well aware of what it meant to resist an arm of the state, such as the public security police, of course. More than that, however, they could not approve of their town being burned. They could not approve of their families being taken from them. At the very least, they could oppose a lawless, barbaric act such as this. They could force society to butt its head against justice.
それでもまた生命が大地に根付きます。
Higuchi Ririko spoke of her father. She had not even been able to give him a proper burial. She felt that this was inexcusable. However, as the fervor before her grew ever greater, she could not help but feel a murmur within her chest.
たとえ何度踏み潰されようともひまわりはまた太陽へ向かって花を咲かせるのです。
ならばもう一度踏み潰せばよい。
A man suddenly appeared on the roof. He silently approached the woman with the microphone, his handgun trained upon her.
樋口リリ子、私が直接お前を黙らせねば愚か者どもは沈まないようだな。
The man was none other than Hozuki Masaomi. I didn't have much time left. Well, it's going pretty much according to schedule at least. Knocking out 4 people had been a bit difficult. Did Pops already go all the way to the roof? Jeez. I needed to get Natsumi out of there while I had the chance. I took a deep breath and stared at the floor in front of me. At the door. Is this it? I took out the counterfeit ID that Isono had made for me. Please work. I passed the card through the slot. Whoa! The door slid open just like that. You did it, Isono. With a little help from Dad. I advanced into the basement, musing lightly to myself. You know, the stone stairway was pretty out of place for a school. Man, I can't believe he went out of his way to build something like this over a summer break. You'd have to be pretty much off your rocker to consider doing something like that. I'll be there soon, Nachan. I descended the passage. You know, he did say he was just rebuilding, or not even rebuilding, remodeling, right? I assumed that the underground passage itself was already there to begin with. if you think about it, right? I hope One-chan is safe. Hozuki should have gone to the roof in order to have a little confrontation with her. All I could do was hope he let her get away with this one. Stars filled the night sky. The sheer energy of the struggle between her people and the public security police permeated all the way to the roof. The woman's legs trembled with fear of the man standing behind her. However, she was also filled with a sense of relief for a job done well.
本当に屋上まで上がってきちゃった。
She slowly turned around.
リリコさんそっくりでしょ。
She had wanted to distract Hozuki from his prey for as long as possible. And so One Toka, despite the objections of the others, had come up with a plan to stall him.
樋口リリ子は下の放送室か。
Before the execution ceremony had gotten underway, Toka had snuck into the school, carrying with her the majestic curtain, which now hung from the roof. She had donned Higuchi Ririko's clothing, thus adopting the likeness of the one bearing the maximum penalty. As such, the public security police had not deterred her from her task. Kenichi had been flatly against Toka's proposal. Certainly, it was true that he would have a larger window of opportunity with which to rescue Natsumi if Hozuki were lured to the roof. However, the person who assumed the role of his bait would be placing themselves in grave danger. Spuriously assuming the guise of one bearing the maximum penalty was a severe crime after all. And the person who would commit this crime would come face to face with Hozuki Masaomi himself. No one would be able to come to her aid. Toka, however, refused to budge. Perhaps she had been spurred forth by her sense of loneliness. For amongst all of Kenichi's companions, Toka was the only one who had not experienced the weight of the uprising. So Toka got to thinking. She pondered things again and again, sitting in the midst of the genius Isono and the driven Sachi. She pondered just what an ordinary girl such as herself could do. Toka had always experienced great difficulty in making even the most trifling decisions for herself, and yet she desperately sought to find that which she could do for her friends. When she had finished her search, Toka returned to Kenichi, who had been unable to accept her proposal, and gave him a smile filled with the utmost serenity. Since this is something I decided for myself,
私を捕まえてもこの場は収まらないんだからね。
she gradually worked her way backwards to the edge of the roof while speaking. She had to use the rope tied to the fence in order to escape to the floor below. Hozuki suddenly dropped the gun he was pointing at Toka.
おおむね予定通りか。
He vanished from the roof with the same suddenness.
あれ
Toka couldn't help but feel that it had been a tad anticlimactic, and she couldn't help but feel a bit uneasy. What if Hozuki were not pursuing Higuchi Ririko? What if he were heading to the prison? She wanted to be of aid to Kenichi, no matter how weakly.
手紙の続きをお伝えします。
The voice which had spoken to the people's souls continued. I arrived in front of the iron prison
お
door.
疲れ様です。
Good work.
な、
I took advantage of his confusion to jump around to his back. So you're the last. I choked his carotid artery from behind, laying him flat. There we go. I fought through his pockets. Nice, it's right here. I would really have been screwed if Pops were carrying this. It actually felt like things were going a bit too well. For example, I hadn't heard so much as a single shot from outside. Shouldn't there have been a riot going on? God damn, don't tell me this is all part of Pop's traps. Pop's trap. No, I was just overthinking this. I had the power to overcome Hozuki. Let me just open you up. I inserted the key into the padlock.
どうして
Natsumi clearly could not believe her eyes. Yo, Nachan. Sorry to keep you waiting.
ケンちゃん
Sorry, I don't really have the time to explain. Come on, Nachan.
どうして
What is it? Did I forget to shave part of my beard?
ケンちゃんケンちゃん
Natsumi clung to me.
ケンちゃんケンちゃん
Nachan, I forgot about everything else for a second there. We seriously didn't have time for this. Nachan, we gotta hurry.
ケンちゃん、どうするの？
First, we need to get out of here. Once we reach somewhere safe, we'll take it from there.
そうか、そうだね。ごめんね。
Alright, this way. I took Natsumi's hand and led her back to the passage I entered from. Make sure you don't fall.
大丈夫。
It was a straight path from here on out. If Hozuki were up there, things would not turn out well. You're okay, aren't you, One-chan? I ascended the passage with Natsumi, believing that One-chan was safe. Sweet. No one's here. The guards were still unconscious. Nachan, this way. I pulled Natsumi by the hand, leading her through the hallways at a quick pace. You're a fast runner, right, Nachan?
大丈夫だと思う。
Isono should be waiting for us in the classroom just around the corner up ahead. We're going to run there. I ran through the hallway, paying careful attention to my surroundings. I could no longer hear One-chan's voice from outside. We reached the classroom safely. Great, just like we planned. Isono was waiting on the other side of the window.
この窓から出ろ！
Ah, sorry.
この窓から出ろ！急げ！
Isono yelled from his perch. Okay, we've made it this far.
ほおずきは屋上までおびき出したが、もうこっちへ向かってる。もたもたするな。
Hey, he didn't have to tell me that. Nachan, you go on ahead.
ケンちゃんは？
Hurry! There's nothing to worry about. I gently squeezed Natsumi's palm.
信じてるね。
よし、夏美ちゃんのことは任せろ。
Yeah, don't worry about me. Isono smiled in relief. It was a bit out of character for him. He took Natsumi and escaped into the crowd. Now I needed to take on the final challenge. We couldn't just leave it at this and escape. I still didn't know if Toka and One-chan were safe. Furthermore, we would have ended up getting all of the townspeople involved. So for the sake of everyone who had cooperated with us, that didn't take you long. I spoke without turning around. So he had ignored One-chan and had come straight to me.
私を超えられれば一件落着というわけか。
I heard the sound of his gun's safety being released as I turned around. I was staring down the barrel of his gun.
樋口三郎の真似事か。
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
これは国家に対する反逆だ。
It's our victory all the same if I can defeat you.
お前を倒せば外の暴動など簡単に鎮圧できる。
Actually, no. You didn't even need to defeat us. Do you really think so?
慢心は失敗を招くぞ。
It wasn't overconfidence.
無双はナイフだけか。
Guns are a bit too loud, you see. In fact, I took down your private army with nothing more than my bare hands. And I should be able to do the same to Hozuki. If I could take this hand-to-hand combat, my victory was assured.
お前は今こう思っている。眉間に突きつけられた拳銃さえ何とかできれば私を倒せると。
Indeed. You should really be more careful.
だが私は今すぐに引き金を引かない。なぜだかわかるか？
Because it would be a waste to kill me now, after having spent all of that time and effort raising me.
その通り。貴様はこの状況をどう打破するのか見てみたいのだ。
Overconfidence invites failure. Surely you know this. This wasn't a goddamn movie. You should have just shot me and gotten this whole thing over with. I very much agree, Kenichi. Hozuki stared down at me from the other end of the gun.
質問しよう。
Go ahead.
私は常にお前の先手を取っていつでもお前を罠にはめることができた。なぜだかわかるか？
Because you always knew what I was thinking.
どうしてそう思うのだ？
Who knows? Well, I guess it'd be because of your wiretap.
手品というものは種がわかると腹立たしいものだろう。
Yeah. I guess that makes me one of those idiot spectators, huh?
私は恐ろしい。そういった固定概念がお前に根付いていたからお前は簡単に騙されたのだ。
I see. A preconceived notion, huh? Yeah. Hozuki was human, just as I was. The only reason he had appeared so threatening was because he had set the stage as such. Well, anyway, you're sure not showing me any openings.
お前も不用意に動いたりしないのはさすがだ。
This wasn't going anywhere. Hey, can you make me a promise? Consider your apprentice's last request.
聞こ
If I lose, I want you to pardon everyone in town.
う。それは敗北宣言か？
Well, I don't mind if you take it that way. I just wanted to make my request known.
町民は罪には問わん。公開処刑は本来が非公式の行事であったため、我々としてもあまりことを荒げたくはない。
Thank you very much. So what about my friends? Osuke gave a thin smile.
もう一度公開処刑を行う。その時は断頭台が5つ必要だな。
Something inside of me snapped. I said it.
言ったはずか。
I'd said that you should be more mindful of the people caught underneath your wheel. And that I would kill you if you mess with my friends. I told you that you had best remember it. I did not move into action as I yelled. And that was because I've been catching glimpses of figures for a while now. One-chan and Toka had moved behind Hosuke, and I was waiting for them to give me an opportunity to strike. Because of this, Hosuke pulled the trigger just a split second too late. His irises slid to the right, and that was all I needed to decide the match. I grabbed his arm and made him drop his gun. Hosuke escaped my grasp before retrieving his gun. In order to avoid being caught in a joint hold, he really did know what he was doing. However, Hosuke took a step back. He must have been unable to balance on that leg of his as he was staggering to the left. I had already drawn my knife. I leaped toward Hosuke, aiming for his defenseless left side. What? I felt an impact on my left side. My sight grew dim before I even had a chance to realize what was going on. The attack had taken me completely by surprise. I could hear someone desperately calling my name, but my mind was in such a disarray that I was unable to process the situation. Why? How? It had been a fatal blow aimed accurately at my vitals. Power left my knees. My shoulders trembled. I could barely breathe. The unthinkable had happened, and it had taken only a moment. There was only one possibility as for what had happened, and that possibility filled me with dread.
固定概念だな、森田。
Hosuke Masaomi stood up on the floor in one leg. His supposedly injured left leg was supporting the weight of his entire body. The cane that he had always used for support was not in his hands. He had only staggered to the left in order to prepare a roundhouse kick. You gotta be joking. For 7 damn years?
樋口リリ子も7年間孤独に耐えた。ありえないことなど世の中にはたくさんある。
One-chan had already crumbled to the floor. She had probably tried to save me.
私は足が悪い。お前はずっとそう思っていた。だから最後の最後で爪を誤ったのだ。
I couldn't move.
もう一度質問する。私は常にお前の先手を取っていつでもお前を罠にはめることができた。なぜだかわかるか？
A trap that was shown to you 7 years in advance, huh? How fucking stupid and how so anime. What an insane plot. It wasn't because you knew that what I was thinking?
森田の思考など他人の私にわかるはずがなかろう。
え？
よく我々のように人の上に立つ人間は下の者に向かってお前の思考は手に取るようにわかるというが、実際はそんなことはない。我々は他人の思考を予測しているのではなく、思考を否定しているのだ。
Exactly. Designate. My eyes went foggy.
森田たちがどんな作戦を立て、日向夏美を救出しようとするのか、それは予測しがたいものだった。だが必ず最後には私の弱点をついてくると確信していた。不自由な足を狙い攻撃を仕掛けてくると思ったのだ。私は唯一それだけに備えていた。
I could do nothing but laugh.
お前はただ 私の指定した檻に誘われたに過ぎない。
This monster had deceived me for 7 whole years. One-chan couldn't move. I couldn't move. I had to move, and yet my consciousness was growing dimmer and dimmer.
お前の負けだな。
My jaw slackened at his comment. It must have seemed as if I were nodding in agreement. Lose? Lose, you mean? My eyes closed themselves. I had not been able to help anyone. Unlike 7 years ago, there was no time for a sense of guilt to take root in me. There was not enough time to think about my friends.